Welcome to Soul via Soul, the podcast where we embark on a journey of self-love and true wellness. I'm your host, Jada, and I'm absolutely delighted to have you here with me as we dive into all things mind, body, and soul. Now, what do you say we get this thing started? Let's dive in. Today we're going to talk about fall and the metaphor of the seasons, and specifically about layers. I love fall. This is my favorite time of the year. And I know for a lot of people, that's also true. There's something about the change of seasons that we welcome, we enjoy, we feel in some way, I think, this coziness of the cooler temperatures just feels good. And why is that? Why is it that, especially here in the Midwest, we having the beauty of having 4 seasons, it's something that most of us generally look forward to, the change of the seasons. Maybe the harshness of winter, not so much, but even then I love the stillness of winter and the beauty of a snowfall. But there's something deeper when we think about seasons and the rhythm of life and the cycles. There's something that's very soothing as we move from one season to another. And layers. The putting on and the taking off of layers. Obviously, we do that with the changing of seasons. We pull out our favorite pair of cozy slippers or fabulous sweater or a fun scarf, new boots. There's lots of things about fall that are adored. Even the change of the beverages, like we start sipping on warm teas and hot chocolate, and there's this sense of warming ourselves with all these layers as the temperature gets cooler. But what about energetic layers? What about layers of fear? What about layers of shame and guilt that we don't realize we're still putting on every day, that are weighing us down, that are keeping us stuck? And for a lot of people, putting on layers actually feels cozy because it can hide things. And it allows this insulation and feeling of safety when you're snuggled in a blanket, and it's almost like you get to hide a little bit, which feels kind of nice, protective, reminiscent of building a fort as a kid and climbing in and not having anyone know that you were there. It's like you disappear. The coziness, the warmth, the layers that make us feel loved and safe. And what about the layers that we unknowingly still wear? And I love fall for a few reasons, all the ones I just mentioned, but I also, because it's October and we're talking about all things scary in Halloween, how does it feel to remove layers? Now, in the summertime, we welcome shedding layers because it's time to break out the shorts and the swimsuit and enjoy the feeling of the sun on our face. And there's also this feeling of using layers as something that is scary because those layers of fear keep us sometimes feeling like we're invisible and hidden and protected. So what would it look like to unpack that? What would it look like to take those layers that you may not even know were there and strip them away. Does that feel a little bit exposing just by me saying that? So let's talk about the metaphor between layers of clothing that we adorn ourselves with and fear, since it is October and we're doing all things scary. And it's kind of a great metaphor, too, about the scariness of Halloween and our ability to look at the things in our life that we want to change that might cause us some fear. So, in the same way that layers of clothing protect our bodies from harsh weather, layers of fear can be seen as a protective mechanism for our hearts. Just as clothing shields us from physical elements, fear can act as an emotional shield, tempting us and preventing us from being hurt by painful experiences. And that can often be a reason someone doesn't want to do the process of healing. It's like the idea of reliving a painful experience is just too much, and simply adorning ourselves with some fear and just looking away seems to be the best option. But it's obviously not going to get better if we continue to do that. What about fear and clothing as a barrier? So just as multiple layers of clothing create a barrier between our bodies and the elements, layers of fear create barriers between our emotions and our potential sources of pain. Fear can act as a shield that attempts to keep us safe by preventing us from engaging in situations that might lead to emotional pain. But it also keeps us from loving. And therein lies the dilemma. Because what's on the other side of us loving ourselves deeply and experiencing and receiving love necessitates we remove these barriers. And that causes fear because that's scary. By removing the layers of clothing from our body, we expose ourselves to the elements. And similarly, peeling away layers of fear may make us feel emotionally vulnerable. And this vulnerability is something that a lot of people just resist because it feels standing naked is something that is not comfortable. And just as we need to find a balance between staying warm and not overheating by adding or removing layers of clothing, we also need to find a balance in managing our fears. Too many layers of fear can isolate us from positive experiences, while too few layers can leave us emotionally exposed. And it's about adapting to different situations. And that's what mind body healing allows you to do. It allows you to safely remove the layers of fear that are keeping you from loving yourself. And sometimes it means standing naked with vulnerability and healing those pains so that you can let go of the layers of fear that you may not even know you're carrying. So, in order for us to heal, we have to be able to, again, I've used the word naked a few times, but this metaphor of clothing represents layers of fear. And it's a way to help us understand how fear can serve as a layer of protection, but it actually shields us from our emotions. So, what would it take like to remove the layers in your life? What would it look like for you to stand naked with yourself, to finally mirror the life you deserve? And when we think about layers, how are they serving you? What would it look like for you to shed the thoughts and emotions that are actually layering your heart, preventing you from feeling and loving? I am still struck by the nerve that was created by talking about shame and how that is an invisible layer that we adorn ourselves with every single day. And it actually is a layer over our heart. It prevents us from seeing and loving ourselves in the most authentic and genuine way. And yet it really is invisible to most of us. We don't outwardly acknowledge it. We certainly don't talk about it, but it's there. And it is a layer. It is a layer that prevents us from feeling and moving into the best versions of ourselves, creating a life of love, creating a life we love, and a life that loves us back. It's why I am currently creating something that answers the question to how. How do we remove these layers? How do we do so in a loving way that makes us feel safe while standing naked? That helps us feel like we're okay as we do the work of uncovering and unlearning the things that no longer serve us, so that we can safely remove this invisible layer that covers our heart. And it's a layer that most of us walk around wearing. The guilt and shame that are a product of our growing up. The disappointments and hurts that we have felt, that we have coated our heart with, that layer us and we think protect us in life, but actually they prevent us from feeling, knowing, loving deeply. And it's the unbecoming of who we are by removing those layers of false and negative beliefs that allow us to step into the best version of us. Because on the other side of that fear, on the other side of the scary process of taking off the layers, is the most authentic version of you who's just waiting. Yes, it's scary. Yes, it's going to be removing layers. Yes, some of those layers are obvious and some of them are not. But by stepping into and creating space for your healing, you'll be able to literally, figuratively, authentically unbecome what no longer serves you and become the best version of you. Thank you for joining me on this week's Soul via Soul podcast. And as I alluded to in this podcast, I am creating something. The answer to the how do I love myself, the answer to how do I remove shame from being the first layer that greets the world. I'm going to leave a link in the show notes to the waitlist. Jump on the waitlist for some exclusive access to this new program I'm creating. A program that's going to offer a unique way to heal every layer of you, energetically, physically, and emotionally. Because we have to heal all the layers of ourselves in unison in order to become the best version of us.